The G7 Hiroshima Summit was held over 3 days between May 19th and 21st, 2023. Japan was this year's host country. Prime Minister Kishida Fumio and his spouse Yuko welcomed world leaders to his hometown of Hiroshima. President Macron of France, President Biden of the United States, Prime Minister Sunak of the United Kingdom, Chancellor Scholz of Germany, President of the Council of Ministers Meloni of Italy, Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada, as well as President of the European Council Michel, and President of the European Commission von der Leyen were among those personally greeted by the Kishidas. The international community now faces Russia's aggression against Ukraine, which has shaken the foundation of the international order. The world is at a historic turning point. As the G7 chair, Prime Minister Kishida prepared for the summit, strongly determined to demonstrate to the world the G7's firm commitment to opposing any unilateral attempts to change the status quo by force, as well as threats of nuclear weapons, let alone their use, and to upholding a free and open international order based on the rule of law. The discussions ranged in subjects to address challenges such as Russia's aggression against Ukraine, nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation, economic resilience and economic security, and global issues such as climate change and energy. This program will showcase the 3-day G7 Hiroshima Summit. The city of Hiroshima is located in the western part of Japan. It is the central city of the Shikoku and Chugoku regions, with a population of approximately 1.2 million people. It was the first city in the world to be devastated by a nuclear weapon, but now has become a city that symbolizes hope for international peace. Hiroshima City faces the tranquil Seto Inland Sea and enjoys a mild climate throughout the year. The summit was held south of Hiroshima City at the Grand Prince Hotel Hiroshima in Ujinajima, a triangular building 23 stories tall. Driven by his strong desire to attend the summit, President Zelenskyy of Ukraine made a surprise visit to Hiroshima, which also marks his first in-person participation to the summit.
I recommended strongly to come here to Japan, to go to Hiroshima, the city of peace, and to meet here the leaders, because this is the place where we should discuss how to get to a just peace.
Ukraine. Russia's aggression against Ukraine has been ongoing since February 2022, and the future remains uncertain. The number of civilian casualties in the ongoing war continues to rise daily. Prior to the summit, Prime Minister Kishida visited Ukraine in March 2023. He offered flowers to the victims in Bucha City, on the outskirts of Kyiv, and listened directly to those who had experienced the atrocities caused by Russia's outrageous acts.
こうした残虐な行為に対して強い憤りを感じます。日本はこれからもウクライナの平和を取り戻すために最大限の支援を行っていきたいと思います。
At the G7 Hiroshima Summit, discussions were held on the Ukraine issue. President Zelenskyy expressed gratitude during the gathering of world leaders for the support from G7 members and reiterated Ukraine's unwavering stance against Russia's aggression.
Кожен у світі має визнавати державні кордони, кожен у світі має захищати справедливість, кожен у світі має дбати про життя, кожен у світі має сприймати мир своїм обов'язком.
The G7 leaders once again condemned in the strongest possible terms Russia for its clear violations of international law. They promised to bolster diplomatic, financial, humanitarian, and military support needed by Ukraine for as long as it takes in order to bring about peace.
And this morning, I once more shared and assured President Zelenskyy, together with all G7 members and our allies and partners around the world, that we will not waver. We're going to continue to provide economic, humanitarian, and security assistance to Ukraine so it can stand strong as long as it needs it.
Foreign and security policies, nuclear disarmament, and nonproliferation. On August 6, 1945, toward the end of World War II, an atomic bomb was dropped on the city of Hiroshima from an American B-29 bomber, the first use of a nuclear weapon in human history. The bomb exploded, releasing a blinding flash at an altitude of 600 meters above the ground. It caused massive destruction and an enormous number of casualties in an instant. It is estimated that 140,000 people, or about 40% of the population of Hiroshima, died within that year. On August 9th, just 3 days later, a second atomic bomb was dropped on the city of Nagasaki in northern Kyushu. The death toll reached 73,000, and as with Hiroshima, the city of Nagasaki suffered devastating damage. Even today, 78 years later, the scars left by the atom bomb remain in Hiroshima. This building stood only about 160 meters from the epicenter of the blast. It was the Hiroshima Prefectural Industrial Promotion Hall, where products and artworks were exhibited. The structure was severely damaged by the atomic bomb's shockwave and heat. Only the iron frame at the top of the building remained, and the site came to be known as the Atomic Bomb Dome. The Peace Memorial Park was established to serve as a permanent symbol of peace near the atomic bomb's detonation. This is the Children's Peace Monument, located in the park. A bronze statue depicts a girl holding up a golden origami crane atop a pedestal. It was modeled after Sasaki Sadako. At the age of 2, she was blown away by the blast, but miraculously sustained no external injuries and grew up healthy. However, at the age of 12, she was diagnosed with leukemia and hospitalized. Sadako received 1,000 origami cranes as a get-well gift, and while they inspired her to start folding her own cranes, carrying her wish to live, the leukemia claimed her life 8 months later. Sadako's death prompted her elementary school classmates to petition for a statue to mourn the child victims of the atomic bomb. The origami crane became a symbol of peace, and every year over 10 million paper cranes are sent to the Children's Peace Memorial from around the world. The Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum's mission is to convey the reality of the use of nuclear weapons. Video is projected on a topographic model of a 5-kilometer blast radius over Hiroshima City, illustrating how the city was turned to scorched rubble in an instant in the atomic bomb's wake. The museum's photographs taken directly after the bombing show the horrors it left behind. These artworks portray what the atomic bomb victims experienced. Many items, including clothes that victims were wearing, are exhibited. A large number of visitors from overseas come to better understand the reality of nuclear weapons.
Really shocking, scary, yeah.
I think that important for the children to know what happened so that they can learn their generation.
And I see that people should go to this museum and see how hard and how awful atomic bombs can be and why we shouldn't use it anymore.
During this summit, the participating leaders visited the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum together. It was an experience that would become part of their histories. Following their museum visits and speaking with survivors, the leaders reflected on what they felt and what they wanted to convey to the world for the guest book. President Macron of France wrote, "It is our responsibility to act for peace. That is the only struggle which deserves to be led." President Biden of the US wrote, "Together, let us continue to make progress toward the day when we can finally and forever rid the world of nuclear weapons." President of the Council of Ministers of Italy, Meloni, wrote, "Today, let us remember the past and envision a hopeful future together." President of the European Commission, von der Leyen, wrote, "It is a stark reminder of the terrible cost of war and our everlasting duty to protect and preserve peace." The president was deeply moved by the story of Sadako Sasaki and her paper cranes. She took some home and later sent a message from the EU saying, "We are treasuring them." This is the Atomic Bomb Memorial Monument, where the leaders proceeded after the museum to offer flowers and prayers. The monument contains a register of the names of 333,907 deceased victims, with an inscription that reads, "Let all the souls here rest in peace, for we shall not repeat the evil." Afterward, the leaders participated in a commemorative tree planting within the park of a sapling grafted from Somei Yoshino cherry trees, known as Hibakuzakura, which survived the devastation of the atomic bomb.
There could be no more fitting place to discuss the urgent need for peace than Hiroshima.
Meeting here in Hiroshima was symbolic, and it served as a reminder of the devastating consequences of war. What we saw around the table, including with outreach partners, is a solid commitment to obeying the UN Charter, to respecting the territorial integrity and sovereignty of all states, and that is the basis on which we will be able to move forward.
At the summit, the G7 leaders' Hiroshima Vision on nuclear disarmament was issued. It is the first standalone G7 leaders document focusing on nuclear disarmament. The historic document reaffirmed their commitment to a world without nuclear weapons, with concrete agreements, future priorities, and directions toward a world without nuclear weapons, an opportunity to build the international community's momentum toward a world without nuclear weapons.
この中で77年間の核兵器不使用の重要性について一致するとともに、核戦争に勝者はなく、核戦争は決して戦ってはならないことを 確認いたしました。被爆地を訪れ、被爆者の声を聞き、被爆の実相や平和を願う人々の思いに直接触れた G7 首脳がこのような声明を発出することに歴史的な意義を感じます。
Economic resilience and economic security. The rise of energy and raw materials prices due to the worldwide COVID-19 pandemic and Russia's aggression against Ukraine have laid bare vulnerabilities in the global economy. There is also an increase in moves by some countries to leverage economic dependency and coerce other countries or regions in order to achieve their own strategic interests. Emerging technologies such as AI, which bring greater convenience to people's lives, could be subverted for military use and pose risks to national security. The G7 Hiroshima Summit saw the announcement of the G7 leaders' statement on economic resilience and economic security, and the G7 Clean Energy Economy Action Plan.
多角的貿易体制の重要性は変わらない一方で、グローバルサウスを含む国際社会全体の経済的強靭性と経済安全保障を強化していくことも必要です。そのために G7 としてサプライチェーンや基幹インフラの強靭化、経済的威圧に関するプラットフォームの立ち上げなど、取り組みを強化し、また世界全体のクリーンエネルギー経済への移行をリードしていきます。
Working together to address multiple crises, climate change, energy, environment. The Paris Agreement adopted at COP21 set a long-term goal to pursue efforts to limit the increase in the global average temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. There is now a focus on net zero by 2050, the target of reaching net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 and how each country will work towards achieving this goal. Russia's aggression against Ukraine has prompted European countries to reduce their dependence on Russian natural gas and oil, leading to an increase in international energy prices. For the first time, the summit incorporated a tiered approach to the phase-out of unabated fossil fuels, including not only coal, but also oil and natural gas. The targets for the introduction of renewable energy were explicitly stated. The 7 nations aim to increase the production of solar power to over 1 billion kilowatts collectively by 2030, more than 3 times the current level. They aim to increase offshore wind power production by 150 million kilowatts. They shared the importance of their common goal of net zero emissions through various pathways according to each country's situation. Professor Emeritus John Curtin of the University of Toronto is a leading expert in research focused on the G7.
I think the most important one was climate change. And we only have about 4 more years to control it before we go over irreversible tipping points. So I was encouraged that the Hiroshima Summit did just enough to give us a little more time before we can take the big, bold actions needed to do what we must.
Strengthening engagement with partners. Amid the increasing influence of the emerging and developing countries, collectively known as the Global South, the G7 strengthened their engagement with international partners through discussions on various challenges faced by the international community, with the leaders of 8 invited countries, including India and Brazil, and relevant international organizations. During these meetings, the leaders of the G7 and the invited countries jointly issued the Hiroshima Action Statement for Resilient Global Food Security. They shared the importance of close collaboration to build more resilient, sustainable, and inclusive agricultural and food systems. In the field of global health, the G7 leaders reaffirmed the importance of strengthening efforts for preparedness, prevention, and response for future health emergencies, based on the lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic, with the goal of achieving universal health coverage. One of the efforts was the G7 leaders' shared commitment to enhancing equitable access to medical countermeasures through the announcement to establish the MCM Delivery Partnership for Equitable Access.
国際保険については G7 全体として資金貢献を行っていく中で日本はグローバルヘルス技術振興基金への2億ドルのプレッジを含め官民合わせて75億ドル規模の貢献を行う考えです。
Secretary General Guterres of the United Nations participated in the outreach sessions.
What I believe is clear is that there is a growing conscience in developed countries, and I felt it in the G7, that not enough is being done, both to reform outdated institutions and at the same time to, I would say, remove the frustration of the Global South by an effective policy of solidarity with the Global South.
At the conclusion of the summit, Prime Minister Kishida Fumio held a presidency press conference.
1945年の夏、広島は原爆によって破壊されました。その後、被爆者をはじめ、広島の人々の絶え間ぬ努力によって、広島がこのような美しい町として再建され、平和都市として生まれ変わることを誰が想像したでしょうか。今、我々はロシアによるウクライナ侵略という国際秩序を揺るがす課題に直面しています。今のようなこの厳しい安全保障環境だからこそ、法の支配に基づく自由で開かれた国際秩序を堅持し、平和と繁栄を守り抜く決意を世界に示す。世界80億の民が全員、そして広島の市民となったとき、この地球上から核兵器はなくなるでしょう。我々の子どもたち、孫たち、子孫たちが核兵器のない地球に暮らす理想に向かって、ここ広島から今日から 一人一人が広島の市民として一歩一歩現実的な歩みを進めていきましょう。
Je veux remercier donc le Premier ministre japonais pour son accueil, la parfaite organisation. Nous avons commencé ce G7 avec un moment qui a été très émouvant et qui nous a replongé, si je puis dire, dans notre histoire contemporaine et le devoir qui est le nôtre, en particulier quand on parle de paix dans le monde, en visitant ce mémorial d'Hiroshima et en nous remémorant et en apportant aussi en témoignant notre respect à l'égard de toutes les victimes de la bombe d'Hiroshima, évidemment de Nagasaki.
In questi 2 giorni noi abbiamo portato il nostro punto di vista. Io credo che questo G7 di Hiroshima sia stato per il Giappone un successo, credo che vadano fatti i complimenti, le congratulazioni al primo ministro Kishida per l'ottima organizzazione e anche per la lucidità con la quale ha steso i temi dei dibattiti che noi abbiamo affrontato in questi 2 giorni.
Und die Entscheidungen, die hier getroffen worden sind deshalb, glaube ich, ein ganz gutes, klares Bekenntnis zu einer besseren Welt, getragen von den wirtschaftsstarken Demokratien. Und deshalb ist das auch hier ein sehr erfolgreicher Gipfel. Dass wir hier an einem so symbolischen Ort wie Hiroshima auch über Frieden und Sicherheit ganz konkret sprechen, ist natürlich mehr als richtig, gerade wenn wir sehen, dass es den furchtbaren Angriff Russlands auf die Ukraine unverändert gibt.
We will reaffirm our support for Ukraine's effort towards lasting peace, our EU support for Zelenskyy's peace formula. Any credible peace plan must be anchored in the principles of UN Charter, territorial sovereignty and territorial integrity.
During this summit, the leaders of the G7, the invited countries, and Ukraine shared their recognition on the importance of the following: adherence to the principles of the UN Charter, including respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity. Support for a just and durable peace based on respect for international law and the principles of the UN Charter. Opposition to unilateral attempts to change the status quo by force. Upholding the free and open international order based on the rule of law. The G7 Hiroshima Summit demonstrated a commitment to steadily advance toward a world without nuclear weapons. The G7 is expected to continue to address challenges and urgent issues related to peace and stability facing the international community. This program was made possible by the Government of Japan.